All right, let's walk through the week 89 menu and meal prep. So this week we're making a really simple one-pot miso veggie macaroni. It's essentially just vegetables that are cooked with garlic, and then you make a tomatoey broth by adding canned tomatoes, some water, and macaroni, and it all cooks together in one pot. No draining or anything like that required. It's just a really easy, simple, kid-friendly dinner. You can easily add protein to it. If you wanted to cook some ground meat before you start making it in that same pot, you just cook the ground meat and then take it out and add it back in at the end, or just top it with a fried egg. We are also making some spicy salmon bowls. The salmon and the broccoli both get roasted in the oven at the same time, and the salmon gets tossed in this spicy sriracha yogurt that is also used to make a sauce that goes all over the bowl. We're marinating some cucumbers. It all gets served over warm rice, and you can top it with whatever you want. I love some fresh herbs, some sesame seeds, and of course that dressing. It's also really good if you have extra boiled eggs or avocado. And if you want that kind of sushi flavor, you can add in some crumbled nori or nori strips. So that recipe uses salmon, but you could use any fish that you want to. I highly recommend taking the skin off of the fish if the skin is on. You can ask your fishmonger or whoever is behind the counter, if you're going to a grocery store that has a fish counter, you can ask them to remove the skin. You can even ask them to remove the bones or cut it up into cubes for you. They can do all of that for you. So if you have that option, I highly recommend asking your fishmonger to do that. And lastly, a sheet pan salad. So we're combining sweet potatoes and green beans, roasting them in the oven, all in the same sheet pan, which I have right here, and whisking together this tahini dressing. As you can see, it's pretty thick. That's because it's been sitting in my fridge. If I were to use this now, I'd probably thin it out with a little bit of water just to make it a little more drizzleable. Boiled eggs will add protein. If you just wanted to have this as like a side salad, you don't have to add the boiled eggs, but I love it with some boiled eggs that you quarter, you scatter it throughout, and then you top it with the sauce, pickled red onions, some crunchy nuts, and some herbs. It's a really delicious meal salad. So let's walk through this week's prep. So I always like to get my cooking, so my oven and my stove items going first, so that while those things are going, I can go ahead and do other things that don't require cooking. So we can roast our sweet potatoes and our green beans ahead if you want to. So if you do want to roast those ahead, you can preheat your oven to 450 degrees, I think it is, and then start prepping your sweet potatoes. So cutting them up, trimming and having your green beans, so those are ready to go in the oven once the oven is preheated. You're gonna roast the sweet potatoes first and then add the green beans later. And then the only other thing that we can cook ahead is boil our eggs for that sheet pan salad. So if you do want to add eggs to that salad, boil them. Now we just have a bunch of chopping and dressings and marinades to make. So I'm just gonna go through it by recipe. So I would start by chopping up my broccoli for the spicy salmon bowls. We need about 5 to 6 cups of florets. And then we need to marinate our cucumbers. So peel and thinly slice 2 cucumbers and then marinate them. Just throw them in a Tupperware container with what the recipe tells you to add, just vinegar and soy sauce. Shake it up and put it in the fridge. Then we can do some prep for our one pot pasta. So this is a veggie heavy pasta. We can chop up 2 cups of cabbage, 2 cups of mushrooms, and 2 cups of bell pepper. You want to finely chop all those just so everything blends well and it's just easier to eat. You can use your blender to finely chop these things, just blend them separately. I would say the only one that maybe won't blend as easily would be the bell pepper, but it should still work. Since this is like a vegetarian dish, I like adding mushrooms because it just adds that kind of meaty flavor and texture. But you could use any combination of veggies here for the mushrooms and the bell pepper. The cabbage I chose to do, instead of like cooking down an onion until it gets like sweet and caramelized, I chose to mix it up and use cabbage. So you're cooking that until it gets nice and soft and caramelized, and then you add the veggies, the garlic, and follow the recipe. And that's all the prep we could do for that. Next thing I would do is pickle my red onion. So just thinly slice your red onion and get it pickled. The only other thing that we can chop up, if you didn't have your fishmonger do it for you, is your salmon or whatever fish you're using. If you have a really nice sharp knife, it's pretty easy to just cut along the bottom and remove that skin. You can leave it on if you want to as well. It's totally up to you. So that's it for chopping. Now we just have a marinade and a dressing to make. So you can whisk together the marinade for that salmon. It just comes together really quickly in one bowl. And then you can whisk together this tahini lime dressing for our sheet pan salad. And that's it for this week's prep. But things I would definitely do ahead are boil my eggs. You might as well boil a few extra because they make a really delicious snack, or they can go on top of a toast or anything like that. If you did want to roast your sweet potatoes and green beans ahead of time, you could also do that, though it's not entirely necessary. But definitely marinate your cucumbers because the longer those sit, the softer and more flavorful they get. Pickle your red onion. These are best the next day. They're actually best 2 days later, and they're good for like at least 2 weeks. I think I've had this in my fridge for 2 weeks. And then if you just make your dressing and your marinade, just doing those things will save you a lot of time. The majority of all the other things you need to do are just chopping up vegetables. So if you do have time, go ahead and chop up either the vegetables for the pasta, you can chop up the sweet potatoes or green beans, and also the broccoli that we need for our spicy salmon bowls. I hope you all love these recipes as much as I did, and happy cooking.